Hi there, this is Tanya from Crawley Property Meet and the Prosper Hub. I'm just doing this quick presentation based on what our HMO officer discussed at Crawley Property Meet last night because it's so important, and it's all about the new HMO changes that are happening in Crawley. But if they're happening near you as well, this is going to be if you don't happen to be in Crawley, this is going to be of importance to you as well. But obviously, you do need to talk to your local HMO people and just make sure what their criteria is. But basically, the government are trying to make it so as all the criteria is the same across the UK. So without further ado, this is going to be a 15-minute presentation because that is all I have on my free recording service here. So I'm going to say goodbye for now, and you're going to hear me as I go forward. So, new HMO changes. Remember the date, it's the 1st of October in Crawley in 2018. You must have submitted your application by then. And if you don't, then you would already be in breach. So you've got to at least got your applications in. Whether they won't be rubber stamped, of course, you won't actually be given your license. But if you can prove that you've submitted by then you will have covered yourself. So don't worry, we're here to help you. This applies to properties with 5 people or more forming 2 or more households in any flat or house. So that's important. So even a flat that fits into that criteria will have to be licensed. So none of this, whether it's 2 stories or blah, 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 3 stories, none of that stuff. It's going to be flats included and 2-story houses, everything. So if you've only got a 4-room property, which we've got 2 of those, you might want to consider, if you've got 5 occupants in that property, for example, you might have a couple's room, you might want to consider whether you want to continue to offer that service. So it's just a you're going to have to think about how you want to run this. So the license application form, the details that they want are the name of the applicant, the license holder, the manager and owner, and proof that you are a fit and proper person. Oh, excuse this little thing coming in. So basically, are you like Pam and I, fit and proper? We think we are. Or are you more like the guy above? If if there's anything lurking in your past that you think that might be a problem, talk to the HMO people at the council, and they will tell you whether they would have a problem with that. And if they do, then you can actually put someone else forward, obviously with their agreement. Also to note that they will, as part of their process of licensing you, they will be contacting your mortgage lender. So if your mortgage lender does not know that you're running an HMO, they need to know, and you need to get that sorted out. And if you're rent to renting, you might want to make sure that there is some clarification on that part with your landlord, i.e. the owner of the property you're rent to renting. So licensing the property details. So what you're going to have to do is, if you do need to have planning permission, if you've already got a licensed HMO with more than 6 people on 3 stories and things like that, or whether you've kind of got one of these larger HMOs, then you will probably have had to already apply for planning permission and building regs. So that's the as appropriate bit, but you just need to find out whether your particular property needs it. And each application needs to be supported with a floor plan and with the room sizes and uses of each room. And you've got to literally number each of the rooms like you would on your AST. So you'll be renting room 1 to Joe Blogg's, room 2 to Fanny Annie or whatever. Don't know where Fanny Annie came from. Anyway, moving on. So all of this kind of stuff needs to be put onto your application. And there are guidelines that are available. There's a guideline document which is available now, and that is currently being updated and will be available in August. But I don't think it's going to be that much different from what they've already got now. But it's Pam and I have been looking at it, and it looks quite covers up all of this stuff and how you need your application to look like. Fire safety was a big issue, obviously, in the wake of Grenfell. And all of these things need to be available. The one thing that that stood out for us was a fire logbook. We don't have that, although, and basically that is that you're checking your smoke and heat detectors around the house on a regular basis. He said minimum 3 months. We actually do have our cleaner checking, and she actually does a little tick box scenario on the back of one of the doors. We think that that's okay, but obviously if that goes up in smoke, we might need to think about how we're going to have a backup to that, so as we prove that if anything happens, that we had one and that we knew that they were working. There's, ink emitting strips was another one that we had to discuss. Basically, if you've got your smoke alarm in the bedroom, in each of the bedrooms, those doors need to have incandescent strips. If you've only got them in the hallways and in your communal areas, then don't put incandescent strips in your around the bedroom doors, because you're basically, if a fire starts in the bedroom, you'll be stopping the fire or the smoke coming out and setting off the alarm. So that's what the incandescent strips do. They're actually preventing the movement of smoke and etc. So it depends on. We've got one house where we put them in the bedrooms, and we've got most of our houses don't have them. We only have them in the hallways and in the kitchen, etc. So quickly moving on, you've probably had time to read all of these things. Fire blankets obviously need to be away from the cooker, so as if anything does happen, you will be able to that the tenant will be able to grab it without having to go past the fire to get it. And multi-purpose fire extinguishers on all floors. So that's something we're going to have to update. And most of you will already have the thumb turn locks on all of your exit doors and bedrooms, because that is a pretty standard requirement to keep people safe. Licensing occupancy, written tenancy agreements. You just need to provide a blank copy of what your tenants sign. It doesn't have to be each tenant signed thing, and you don't have to keep that updated anything. You just need to give them a blank copy. Deposit protection scheme, what scheme you use, a blank, an example of an inventory, emergency contact numbers, and all of this stuff kind of needs to be available for your tenants, and you need to have proof that you have shown them a lot of this stuff, which we all do, I'm sure, to be compliant with regulations anyway, but just in case, these are just reminders. Licensing your property management. Going to have my fireplace sorted out this afternoon, or just in the next 10 minutes or so, so I better get going. The annual gas safety certificate, electric safety certificate, all of these things need to be available and proof within 10 days if you were ever asked for any of these things. And the electric there was some discussion about whether you needed this 5 years, whether it was a mandatory thing. It will now be mandatory for the electric certificate to be done every 5 years, and the pat testing every year for everything, including a fitted appliance like an oven. So all of that needs to be pat tested annually. We might want to consider clubbing together and getting a pat tester who's very friendly to Crawley Property Meet members for that one. Schedule of maintenance. So that's kind of, what are your plans to keep the property up to date, etc. And diarised elements of that kind of stuff, and who you're using. So we use various people for various things, and we put that into our application. And when you're going to be checking on all of these things, all important stuff. So room sizes, these are going to be non-negotiable. So if your room doesn't comply to these room sizes, it is non-negotiable. And that they used to be a bit more kind of flexible on that, but now they won't be able to. And Chris looked a little bit kind of apologetic for that, but that's just the way it is, I'm afraid. That's Chris Modder, by the way, who I mentioned. He's the HMO officer in Crawley. So what can't be counted? Communal spaces, anything that falls outside of the bedroom door will not be acceptable. Anything that's an ensuite in a room isn't acceptable anymore as part of your room size qualification. 2 smaller rooms, so if you kind of one person has use of 2 small rooms that don't comply, then neither of them comply, so you have to either knock them together or stop renting them. Floor space where it's less than 1.5 meters, so you can only count the floor space that is within 1.5 meters. This might be, for example, we've got a room with a staircase that goes up at one end of it, so we can only calculate where that staircase is 1.5 meters high from that point inwards, and that might be a situation for loft rooms and things like that. Waste disposal. This mandatory condition of license that you have to be part of the council. I think most of us are. If we're paying council tax, I can only imagine that someone who's kind of on a farm in the middle of nowhere isn't really doing that, but that's effectively what it is. And just on a note that if your tenants are not managing their bins properly, it is your responsibility to sort them out. Right, that's a bit of a testing issue for me at the moment. Anyway, moving forward. So where do you apply? These are all the details. If you want to talk to the housing team, that's their number, and this is where you get all your downloads of all the information that's available, including the document that you need to fill in, which is quite thick. Just warning you, if you're paper phobic like I am, paperwork phobic like I am, it might be a bit freaky, but you know, keep calm and carry on. But they are going to eventually bring in an online version, but at the moment we're all going to have to do it by paper. They're just going to be, their filing system is going to just get gigantic, I would have thought, as will ours. So these are the fees. And it's quite interesting. They're giving us a £50 discount if we put so after our first application, if we've got more than one HMO, you're going to get £50 discount, I should say, for any subsequent properties. And this is what the renewal fees are at the moment. And also, I can't remember if I mentioned, but the mortgage lender of any house that is going forward for licensing will be contacted. Okay, so just to kind of keep that in mind, if you haven't told them you're running an HMO, if you haven't got an official HMO mortgage, and if you're rent to renting, that you need to make sure that your landlord is, you know, that they're compliant with their mortgage people, and make sure that they know that this is going to happen. Which I think surprised a few people. So it's going to be for a 5-year license. It's going to be a big outlay to start off with, but obviously if you kind of you know, spread that over those 5 years, then, and prepare for it for the next time round, then you should be okay. If you've got a poor HMO history, if they've spoken to you before for something serious, then they may not give you a 5-year license. They might reduce that to a 2 or 3 year license, and then you have to reapply once you've proved yourself. And what if there's an existing unlicensed HMO that doesn't meet the prescribed? Basically, you've got to make it prescribe. And if you already have a license but don't comply with the new criteria, when you apply, this is basically, landlords will be given up to 18 months from the renewal date to either increase the size of a room or stop using the room as a bedroom. So you get given quite a bit of time to rectify anything. So you know, for some of our rooms in the past, when we were making sure that we were going to be future-proofing our compliance, we moved a wall and nicked another bit of a bedroom, that kind of stuff. So you might be able to do that, and you've got some time to make that happen. And what's considered an offence? Knowingly running a licensed HMO without having applied, knowingly making false declarations in the course of application, knowingly committing a breach of the terms and conditions, and failing to comply with the management of houses of multiple occupancy regulations. So slightly obvious stuff there. So remember the date, it's the 1st of October, and apply before then. Otherwise you are all instantly not compliant. And if you've got an HMO that might be, you could maybe reduce the amount of people who live in it. So we've got somewhere we've got couples rooms, and that takes us into the 5 people. But if we add them as though as just single rooms, then it will take us down to you know, within the 4 people thing. You might want to consider doing that kind of stuff so as you are compliant and don't have to apply. So, you know, keep calm and do your paperwork. And I think we'll be talking about this running up to October, and trying not to get too many grey hairs. Anyway, have a lovely summer, and we will see you in September. Bye for now.